Hello, everyone. Welcome to the AMT Techstones podcast, where we discuss the latest manufacturing technology research and news. Today's episode is sponsored by Modern Machine Shop Made in the USA podcast. More on them later. I am Senior Moses, Director of Technology. I'm here with
Steve Lamarca, Technology Analyst.
And producer Ramia Lloyd in the background.
Hi, friends.
Hey, Ramia.
Hi, guys.
Steve, we got some content to go through.
We do.
First, we'll get to the fun stuff, some racing.
Yes. Okay. So this past weekend, this is going to go out on Friday. This past weekend was the 100th running of the 24 hours of Le Mans.
So, give me background. What is Le Mans?
So, 24 du Mans, if you really want to get into the pronunciation of it, 24, which just means 24 hours. It is like the Super Bowl of the world for motorsports.
Nice.
So, okay, a lot of very prestigious race car drivers become prestigious when they say or have a high pedigree when they can say that they have completed the triple crown of motorsports. And not just motorsports, it's specifically auto racing, automotive race, car racing. And the car racing triple crown is a first position win at the Formula One Monaco Grand Prix.
Monaco,
Côte d'Azur. Like, what's that? Monaco has so many different names.
They do.
The French Riviera. Anyway, Monaco GP, that's one. The second one, not in Formula One, on a different playing ground, is the Indianapolis 500, IndyCar.
Yep.
So your career has to be extensive enough to have jumped to different regulated tiers of car racing. And then finally, it's actually in no particular order, but then a win at the 24 hours of Le Mans. And Le Mans is probably the toughest one because, especially for young drivers, because young drivers are still building their career. They're building their notoriety in automotive racing. So they have the sharp reflexes and they're trying to put down the fastest, most fiery lap times possible. But they have a tough time remembering that it's not a sprint race.
It is a
24-hour race. And to be fair, like Formula One races aren't short races.
Right.
Like my opinion of a sprint race is like 5 to 15 laps.
Sure.
Anything, in my opinion, over 20 laps is like an endurance race.
Okay.
Formula One and like NASCAR, for example, NASCAR's a couple hundred laps. But it's a speedway, so it's like a 1, maybe 2.5 mile track, but there's 3 turns. And you're going left the entire time. Formula One, very complex, big tracks that a lap can be 2.5 minutes. In Formula One, a race is about, I would say, 50 to 75 laps.
Right.
I consider those endurance races, but those are sprint races compared to Le Mans. Which you have 24 hours to complete as many laps as possible. Like when it was conceived 100 races ago, the idea was which automotive manufacturer can build a car that can go as far as possible in 24 hours. It wasn't even speed back then. It was like, who can go the furthest in 24 hours? It was, in fact, not a race for speed, but it was conceived in the name of reliability. Like, and through the 100 races of Le Mans, we've had many inventions: windshield wipers, headlights, disc brakes. Like, not even like the performance stuff, but like the stuff that we think that's not even like a feature, not even an additional feature that was back then a luxury that's now today standard equipment. Not even standard equipment. It's like government regulated equipment. It has to be on a vehicle for a manufacturer to sell it in like most countries. Wiper blades, windshields. That was invented because of Le Mans. And so this was the 100th running. Typically, I started watching these races. It's the second weekend of June every year in the summer. It's in Le Mans, France, which is the Pays de la Loire, which is the French countryside, the Loire countryside of France. And what's really cool is the weather patterns of that particular area in France. It's like New England times 10.
Yep.
Like, New England, if you're in like Massachusetts, and you don't like the weather, give it 15 minutes.
It'll
It's going to change. Le Mans the same way.
Yeah.
Like it will be a hot, blistering, dry day, and the cars love that because the road is really sticky and tacky. And then next thing you know, there's a torrential downpour on one part of the track. So you need soft slicks for like the Mulsanne straight, but then in the Porsche curves, it's like it's out of control.
Yep.
It's a full coverage water. And there's always a lot of drama in like, what tires do we put on the car? And then even better, what tires is the other team using? But also, so when I started watching Le Mans, I started watching probably around 2010. I watched my first full race through and through without sleeping, and actually stayed up and had like television coverage in 2012.
Okay.
And I'll never do it again. It was really fun, to be fair, but I'll only ever do it again if I'm in France to see the race in person.
Yeah,
then I'll do it.
That's an experience. I like peeking in and out during the 24 hours. Like I'll do a morning session, an afternoon, and like 1 a.m. session.
The main reason why I wanted to do it was because like your first few times doing it that way, which is the smart way and the realistic way to do it, is you'll look a Saturday afternoon and you're like, okay, Toyota's leading it.
Yep.
And they're crushing it. They're ahead by 7 laps at this early in the race. This is crazy. Then next thing you know, you come back, like you check in at like 2 a.m. You can't sleep for whatever. Sunday morning, you check in and let's see what the race is doing. And it's like Toyota's out of the race. What happened?
So much drama in between.
There's so much that goes, and you'll miss everything.
Yeah.
You have to have your eyes peeled and drying out for 24 hours straight, and then to get like a split-second glimpse at something catastrophic. Not catastrophic, but like, it's to see where the like, to put it this way, the YouTube video that the WEC, the World Endurance Championship, released on their YouTube channel yesterday was the Le Mans 2023 highlights, which is the biggest race they've had in a long time because it's the centennial. It's the 100th anniversary of the race. The highlights video was 10 minutes long. So what's also what I really like about it is since I started watching the race, the third time I'm trying to get this point across, it's always been like two major manufacturers competing against each other, and then you have a bunch of that's like typically the LMP1, the prototype 1 class,
Right.
Which is it's the major manufacturers. Then you have the LMP2 class, typically, which is fast cars that are dedicated race cars, but by off-brand teams, by specialized racing teams. And then you have the GT class, which is cars that look like cars that you'd buy at a dealership, but have been heavily modified for racing. That's GT. And the classes are ranked from like, LMP1, LMP2, GT Pro, and then GT Am. That's like from fastest to slowest. This year it was Hypercar, LMP, and then GT class. And then they had one car this year. Every other year they have a unrestricted class, right, where they invite somebody to bring their car for whatever reason and see, let's see how far you can go in 24 hours. And I'll get more into that. But so typically the top class, like the LMP1 or in this year the hypercar class, is just two major manufacturers going at it. Maybe they'll have a third one, but that third one is there not necessarily to be competitive, just to see how they'll do. And they're taking it as like a trial run to come back more seriously the following year. This year it was 5 major manufacturers.
Wow, that's a lot. At
each other's necks. The entire time. It was not the entire time. Towards the end, the last 6 hours, it was Toyota and Ferrari.
Wow.
Yeah, so like when I started watching, it was Audi versus Peugeot. And then before Peugeot was like, we've blown way too much money on this program. We've got a few wins. Now Audi's the regular winner. We're ready to hand off the baton. Somebody else show up.
Yep.
And it was Toyota.
Okay.
Toyota came in to provide some competition to Audi. Toyota got better and better. Audi won the first few. And then Toyota started winning these races. This is over the span of years.
Yep.
And then Audi was like, we're backing out. And then Porsche, which is also under the Volkswagen Audi group corporate tree, was like, okay, they're stepping down, but this is our chance to step up. We have the budget, and now that Audi's leaving, it's not like we're having a conflict of interest. Like it's we can compete. And plus, we're known for doing this. You're Audi.
Yep.
Go back to making luxury cars. We make race cars. And Porsche came in, and Porsche's been mildly competitive. Actually, they've been very competitive.
Yep.
It's just I was not expecting Toyota over the past decade to be as competitive as they've been. And that's because Toyota has a rich history of being awful at racing on the global playing field.
Yep.
They're great in Japan, like the Japan Super GT series. Toyota's very like the Prius is even a modified race car in Japan.
That's fun.
But globally, in like France,
not so well.
and in Formula One,
Yeah.
Toyota's never been a success. They've been caught cheating in rally racing, WRC.
Yep.
They've been caught. I don't think they've been caught doing it. They've just been caught being bad in Formula One. In the 90s, they had a Le Mans race car that was grossly outclassing everything, and they determined that you guys are seriously cheating.
Yeah.
So the GT1 is the name of that car, and I think it was like from 1990. No, not 1991. It was like the late 90s, early 2000s. The Toyota GT1. Was competing in the GT class.
Yep.
And if you look up the GT1, that's a prototype car. That's not a GT car.
Yep.
The rules with the GT1 class was basically the idea was make a prototype car, but make it look like a GT car.
Right.
And this is where McLaren with the F1 came to fame.
Yep.
The Ferrari F40 was a GT1 race car. And they were all pretty successful. There was a few more, and I'm forgetting. I think even the Dodge Viper competed at one point as a GT1 car.
Yeah.
The Corvette has been very successful in the GT class, even GT1 car. But Toyota came out with this thing called the GT1, and one of the rules was you need to make a certain amount of models that are available to the public to buy.
Right. Yep.
Toyota never did that with the GT1. And you need to have a luggage capacity. You need to be able to store a suitcase somewhere in the car. And Toyota's rationale was you can fit a suitcase in the car if you deflate the fuel cell and you don't put any fuel in it. There's room for the suitcase.
That's funny.
So it was, and it like, I think it only did well for, I don't even think it won a race.
Yeah.
It did really well, but then they ran into reliability issues, as you do at Le Mans. Anyway, this year, I'll wrap up real quick. This year, Ferrari came back for the first time in 50 years.
Yeah, that's a big news.
They ran away with it.
Oh, really?
Toyota gave them a lot of fight.
Sure.
And Toyota was hot on their tail. The Ferrari had a faster car.
Yeah. There was, since it's the 100th anniversary, there's a bunch of firsts, and you want to...
there was a bunch of firsts. So the really fun first to me was, and I'm not going to keep talking about Ferrari, but it was really cool that they came back and just dominated like they did. They had an Italian team. Like all the three drivers were Italian. Toyota tried that with being a Japanese manufacturer and then have all Japanese drivers their first year.
Right.
It didn't work out.
Oh, no.
Their race car drivers are used to a totally different type of motorsport.
Yeah,
It's sprint race.
Right.
And it didn't work out well for them their first year. But what Ferrari did was very impressive, and they were happy to run away with the Daytona. But the big first to me was that unrestricted class that I mentioned earlier.
Yep.
The unrestricted class this year only had one car in it, and it was a Hendrick Motorsports NASCAR stock car race car.
Yep.
Car.
The cars.
All the cars in one car. And what's funny, this was a lot of firsts because this was probably the first time a NASCAR race car, a stock car, turned in a direction other than left.
Yep. Yep.
There's the first time a NASCAR competed in the rain, because they call races when it rains in NASCAR. And this was the first time that a NASCAR had real working headlights. It's a 24-hour race. Got to be able to see at night.
It's funny when you say that out loud.
It is really funny. So what's really funny about this NASCAR, all these snooty Europeans, and I'm not gonna deny it. I was, even though I'm not European, like I also scoff at like NASCAR.
Right.
I was like, there's no way this thing's gonna be competitive. There's no way this thing's gonna be competitive. Just because when you watch a NASCAR road course race.
Yeah.
So to be fair, this wasn't the first time a NASCAR has turned right. They have these things in NASCAR called road races, where they do a race on a circuit in the U.S. that's not a speedway.
Yep.
And it's an actual like road track. They're hilarious to watch because half of them stove it up in like the first corner and they're out of the race. And then they're like blisteringly fast on straights and then have to slow down to like 15 to go around a corner. And then they speed up again with all 850 horsepower or whatever they got. It's insane. So I was not expecting a competition. And the FIA, the WEC, was not expecting competition either because during practice, they slotted the car at the NASCAR at the back of the pack.
Yep.
It was going to be the last car on the track. It was going to be all the way at the end of the pack. Then late last week, like around Friday when they did qualifying, just to get everybody in solid competitive lap times to see how fast the cars were, this thing was 5 seconds faster than the GT class.
5 seconds? That's pretty good.
5 seconds faster.
That's impressive.
Which, this Le Mans is probably a 3.5 minute track. 5 seconds is an eternity.
It is.
It was 5 seconds faster than the GT course, than the GT cars. And so they actually had to bump this unrestricted NASCAR ahead of two entire classes. Well, one entire class, the entire GT class.
Right.
It was like it bumped them up, and it was actually passing some of the prototypes.
Wow.
Not the hypercars, but certainly it was passing prototypes on like the straights.
Wow.
It was holding its own in the corners.
Okay.
It would lose time in the corners, but not grossly the way we thought it would. And it finished the race.
Yeah.
I was not expecting it to last.
Yep.
Because when I did road tripping with Steve, I think season 2, and went to Joe Gibbs Racing, when I was being shown around Joe Gibbs Racing, they built those motors, those like 850 horsepower American V8s, like single overhead valve, single cam, push rod V8s.
Very simple motors.
They build those things to last one race. Like if they explained to me, like ideally, the engine blows after it crosses the finish line. Like that's a perfect development. If it lasts too long, they've got a problem. If it blows too early, got a problem.
Yep.
Like they want it. The ideal situation, you just total destruction of the motor during the victory lap. And this thing lasted the 24 hours. So like NASCAR, dude, it impressed me, and it probably struck a lot of fear in a lot of Europeans.
That's fun.
It was really fun.
Steve, the biggest takeaway is I need to go to a live race. We've been talking about that for a while, and it's cool to see it on TV, but to feel the sound.
Yeah, to feel the sounds. The TV doesn't help with realizing, like the people that I've talked to that have been to live races, whether it's NASCAR or Formula One, they're all like, you don't realize how bad you need earplugs until you get there. Yeah. Like you can tell a first timer if they don't have earplugs.
Steve, that was awesome. Let's get to our sponsor and then get in some content.
You got it. Modern Machine Shop's Made in the USA podcast. Tune into Modern Machine Shop's Made in the USA podcast to explore manufacturing issues faced by companies making an intentional choice to manufacture in the U.S. Featuring commentary from OEM leaders, Made in the USA blends its nearly century-long expertise with a unique audio storytelling experience to shine a spotlight on the past, present, and future of American manufacturing. Find Made in the USA on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all major podcast platforms. Follow Modern Machine Shop on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn.
Thanks, Steve. Before we get into some articles, I know we've been working on the test bed for a little bit.
We've been trying to.
We've been trying to get a robotic arm, and our price range is $10K less. We just came out of Automate, some perfect opportunity there.
Yeah.
How did that go?
You're stressing me out. So Automate, at the time, was very promising.
Yes.
Talking to a lot of salespeople, great at making promises, these salespeople. I got a lot of brochures. I got a lot of information. I got a lot of solid contacts and leads.
Right.
Just to buy a robot. Like, we're not, like, most people talk about leans, like they're trying to make sales.
Mm-hmm.
Like, dude, I want to buy.
Right.
And it's this difficult. Automate was good because I got to see mostly everything that was available.
Okay.
And apparently this was like their biggest show yet.
I think so. Yeah. It was a good show.
Good job.
Yeah.
Good job, Automate A3. I've been in contact with several manufacturers and one distributor slash supplier slash distributor supplier synonymous distributor slash integrator.
Okay.
Sigma Robotics. I haven't contacted them yet, but they are on my list. I actually think I know. I've made connections with two people that work there.
Mm-hmm.
Sigma's cool because they seemed pretty confident that they could get us a robot for probably 10 to 15.
Sure.
But they assured me that it would be an industrial grade robot arm. So like from one of the big manufacturers that we cannot afford.
Right.
It would just be well used.
Yep.
And probably out of spec, out of tolerance. But honestly, we don't need that stuff.
Yeah, for our application.
I want a robot that works.
Right.
Like if it can do light pick and place and just like open and close an enclosure and maybe a few other things.
Just material
and, like,
handling on Delrin will be fine.
Or just like a professional piece of equipment so we can get the hang of using such a piece of equipment. But what's really cool is they get their prices so low because they buy their supply from the BMW plant in the Carolinas.
Oh, that's cool.
So BMW, an automotive manufacturers buy a lot and use a lot of robots.
Yep.
And when they start seeing issues ramp up in quality control, they go diagnose the robots and what can be done faster. Do we repair the robot or do we replace it?
Yep.
And depending on if they repair or replace it, if they replace it, guess who gets that old, well-used, well-loved robot? Sigma buys it from them. Sigma refurbishes it. They offer refreshing services, and then we'll sell that refurbished robot to whoever needs one, and we'll even offer the services to continue maintaining it.
That's fascinating. The used market basically for robots.
They are the used market
fantastic.
for used industrial like quality robots that at competitive prices. So that sounds really advertising. They did not pin me up to say that. They are not paying us. This is just something this is my understanding from the sales pitch that they gave me while at Automate, and I'm really excited to contact them. I've just been in contact with brand new OEMs first. At the show, Epson Robotics had an advertisement on the side of their booth saying, ready to go out of the box robot solutions starting at $8,800.
Wow.
I'm like, that's within our budget.
Yeah.
Let's see if they mean it. Long story short, I've been talking with them. Japanese made industrial robot arm from a well-known company, not just for, consumer printers, but actually industrial equipment. They make robots. They want to get their robots out there. They are putting them at a very competitive price. I think they quoted us for a 6-axis arm. They're like smallest entry level, like they call it their most affordable articulating arm.
Sure.
The $8,800 was for a Scara arm, like one of those swingy boys. We don't want a swingy boy.
No.
I want a articulating boy. I want a snaky boy. And this thing kitted out,
right,
to what we need would be around like 15.5. And I'm like, dude, you're 500 over the budget that they would give me a slap on the wrist for. Like, come on. So let's keep looking around. Yeah, maybe we'll come back to you if I can squeeze something. But go to Mechademic.
Okay.
These little robots, these adorable little. I'm looking at them. I'm like, this has to be like the Pocket NC of robots,
right?
And that's what I'm sold at. And like, I saw them at Shunk. Who does Shunk make work holding for? Pocket NC.
Yep.
Among many other major manufacturers, but Shunk has one of these little adorable, like fit in your hand robot arm robots. I'm thinking, all right, these have to be somewhat affordable. We've got to be able to buy one of these.
Right.
My first red flag should have been, there has typically only been one robot company on the market that advertises accuracy parameters. Sure, repeatability and precision, every robot manufacturer does that. But accuracy, it's one thing to be repeatable, but like accuracy is getting it right the first time and not zeroing it in.
Right.
And Fanuc for the longest time was the only robot company.
Okay.
These French Canadians at Mechademic have now corrected me.
Oh.
Mechademic is the second robot company on the market that advertises accuracy.
That's fine.
A high degree of accuracy.
Sure.
And that should have been my first red flag. Because you're not
getting
a Fanuc for cheap.
Not the price range we want.
I love you, Fanuc. John Dewey's my boy. Bless up. But like, we're not buying a robot from them anytime soon. It's no hard feelings. It's just we don't have that kind of money.
So where did that take us?
So Mechademic, I'm talking to this nice salesperson with a French Canadian accent, and there must have been something lost in translation. So I'm like, my budget is $10K, and like I want to know what you guys can do. And they showed me their Scara, their Swingy Boy, and their Snaky Boy.
Okay,
that's the two robots that they make. And there's like, the Scara robot is 1.8. or $1,800, and our articulating arm is $2,000.
That's weird.
And I'm like, holy cow!
That's
for
very
like
low.
The price of what I thought the Epson was at the time, $8,800. I could have 4 of the Mechademic arms.
That's one way to look at it.
I'm going to call these guys after I got done talking to Epson because they make a larger robot. I wanted to go with a larger first because my initial caveat with Mechademic was we've got a 3 by 6 foot workbench.
Right.
If we got an Mechademic, we would need to put it on like one of those slider rails.
Yeah.
So it can move from one side of the workbench to the other because it's just so small. And so I contacted Mechademic and be like, hey, what can you, because we need a bigger robot.
Sure.
But we also need an affordable robot. And the guy comes back to me, well, we can definitely get you a solid industrial solution with one of our robots. Everything's included with the robot purchase for just under $20K. And I'm like, excuse me? What?
What happened here?
I was told something entirely different. And I was told like these arms cost like $2,000, like $2K.
Right.
And they like pretty much laughed at me. Their supplier, not them.
Sure.
And so I'm like, basically, long story short is I'm still heartbroken.
Yeah. Almost a square
the
one.
goal has
We're
been
close.
to buy a robot at the end of January.
Yeah.
And then it got pushed to February. And then we sort of dropped it because we were like, let's wait till Automate. Automate has since passed. And then you have now given me the task, get one by the end of June. How realistic was that? I came just from Automate before talking to any suppliers.
Right.
It was like, oh, we should be able to do this. And now here I am with my tail between my legs telling you for the first time that I don't think we can do it. We're going to try. We're going to keep trying. We still got some other companies.
We still have some leads.
There's Aegis, which is a German company that they're like the Legos of manufacturing.
Right.
they advertise their 6-axis, 6-joint arm for like $5,500.
Something like that.
I can't wait to find out that it's actually 55,000. So we'll see how that goes.
I'm ready to be heartbroken again.
Yeah, I'm just ready to go back to China and be like, I'm sorry I ever said anything bad about you. Because
Someday,
you're
Steve.
clearly dominating this industry and nobody's waking up to see it.
I love spicy meatball, Steve, as we get into articles. We're going to end on a really good note, too. Steve, the first article I have is the importance and diversity of data sources. So this is published on AMT, and it goes over some pretty interesting concepts. So one is, we'll get into this later, too, when we talk about paper clutter. But defining your question and then defining your data sources from that question. So the problem of digital waste, which we've been talking about, is, hey, we got a machine.
E-waste.
Let's pull all this data and then figure it out later. Like, that is the worst strategy ever.
We're not shy talking smack about e-waste.
So
listen, put all the plastic you want in the middle of our ocean and let it swirl around to the size of 3 times the size of Texas. But e-waste, man, that's real estate. That's prime real estate that people could be building homes out of, and you're turning into data farms, all because people are taking pictures of whiteboards instead of something that could have been a 12 kilobyte Word document. I'm done.
Okay. So starting backwards on the flow, I think it's important. So what problem are you trying to solve, and then figure out what data that you need to help figure the question out or solve that question. Also, one thing the article talks about also is where that data comes from. So we've been talking about sources of truth for a while. So, when we migrated from our old database of our contacts, our companies and contacts, into putting that in Salesforce, that's one place where we have accounts and contacts. But we also have another place for events, another place for conferences. It's perfectly fine to have different data sources as long as that is the single source. So keeping data where it makes sense, and then when you need the analysis, then you transform that data into your analysis tool as you need, or creating a dashboard for that if you need visuals or business updates. So that's something, a keynote that came out in this analysis. And I think as consumers, we kind of got used to that a little bit. So like the different streaming platforms, that's the data source. If I want to watch 1923, I got to go to Paramount Plus.
Yeah.
If I want to watch, some Marvel movie, I'm going to go on Disney. So as consumers, I think we've gotten used to the kind of proprietary data, and you of course have Amazon, which aggregates everything. You can get Paramount Plus. You can get certain things on.
Where do you
Amazon.
go? Where do you go if you want to watch The Crow? You got to go to Google first because you got to find out what streaming service it's on.
You need to find exactly. You got to figure out what source it is.
You can't even go to the streaming services first.
And the article goes into an interesting example. So weather actually plays an interesting role in some manufacturing places, like if you're in the South, or if you don't have like a climate-controlled air room or a manufacturing area. So if you want to know what the weather's like, actually, it's fairly important in welding. I've noticed that a lot. Okay. We ran into an interesting issue where there's an emergency door near some of the weld booths, or exit door, let's just call it that, to the outside. And it was warm one day, so they propped that door open. The booths along that line started noticing porosity.
Oh, no.
They were getting airflow that was contaminating their welds as they were processing parts. So little things like that.
Yeah. You could turn on the AC, but the shop owner wants to save money.
Yeah.
So instead they're going to get porosity parts that are sent back and don't pass inspection, and now it's the welder's fault.
Yep. So the article talks about, okay, if I want to pull weather and put that into my data set to see if there's any correlation or if that's causing any issues, do I put a little sensor outside? Do I pull the data into my own servers? How do I do this? Or do I just go to the National Weather Service and extract that data? So it gets into very interesting questions of what data do you want to collect and who is the best provider for that data. And I think that's a fair question. So
absolutely,
definitely recommend going through that article and checking out.
That sounds fun. That's a good article.
Steve, tell me about your Modern Machine Shop.
So speaking of our sponsor, they actually released an article that I really loved 6 days ago, and it's titled, "If the federal government is to solve the manufacturing labor shortage, it needs to start here."
Where's here?
Let me tell you. So the article goes on to make another example of like a local community college, high school, college, well-accredited university. A lot of these schools that are adopting manufacturing and making classes based around manufacturing
Gotcha.
to educate students and introduce them into a industry that is flush with money
Right.
that nobody seems to know about, which has been the problem that we've been talking about for probably decades now. I haven't been here for a decade yet, but probably. And the problem is we're still talking about this. Like, we know that this is the deal. Why isn't it changing?
Yeah.
This article is basically a modest proposal to the federal government saying, hey, how about we make this an official part of the curriculum?
Oh.
Remember what happened in the World Wars? Like, the entire country went to work to start manufacturing stuff for the war effort.
Yeah.
We're not at war right now,
Right.
but if we want to maintain our global competitiveness in manufacturing, and if we're going to back up the fact that so much manufacturing is actually coming from overseas and moving to the U.S. to be done in the U.S., we need workers to take on those jobs. How are we going to fulfill this, especially because the need is now arising? Like, there are companies coming over here that need workers, and a community college, like an elective course, isn't going to educate the students anymore.
Right.
Like, if you're good at it and if you're interested in it, that's great. But the article's basically calling for a federal intervention of the federal government to make manufacturing skills part of the curriculum.
That's interesting.
And I think it's a great idea. Man, there's going to be a lot of parents that are going to be really up in arms about it. And
So I have two follow-up questions.
I guarantee you we're not going to see any of that in McLean, Virginia.
Taking a
Put
step
it
back,
that way.
Taking a step back, I do think there's a lot of life lesson courses that should be integrated. I think the curriculum needs to change a little bit. Like, let's talk about taxes.
Ben still wants to know how to pay his taxes.
I'm still trying to figure this out. That's the one thing I didn't learn. But if I learned that in high school, people do go start working right away. They do start paying taxes fairly in high school and later, or right after school. How do you do that? Things like that I think are useful. And there are a lot of valuable lessons. Like, even if you don't get into manufacturing, learning mechanical skills, mechanical processes, like applying those skills to how do you change your tire? A lot of that can come from, some manufacturing classes.
I mean, a lot of the older generations conned my generation into saying that, oh, you just need to go get your college degree and everything's going to be fine.
Right.
Because back in their time, you could be a mailman and afford a 3-story house with a white picket fence.
Yeah.
Now it's not the case.
Right.
It's not that way anymore. And like, in terms of education, like, even if you go to college, your advisor's doing you a disservice if they don't tell you, hey, before you get this degree, I know you want to speed up, become a senior, and graduate, but slow down, get an internship.
Yeah.
Because as nice as this degree is going to be, and it will carry you through your future, it's not going to mean anything without experience.
Yeah.
So go get an internship.
That's true.
So it's not just the education; it's also the experience. And
The other thing I wanted to ask you is, what manufacturing classes did you take? Both middle school, high school, college. Did you take any? Or let's call it hands-on classes.
Hands-on classes. In middle school, I took home economics
Yeah,
so I can make a mean pancake.
I knew how to sew from what was it called? Home economics?
Home ec.
Home ec, yeah.
Home ec. I never got into a shop class because there was so much demand to go into the shop classes and stuff. I never got to take.
So before I did take shop in high school, and looking back at it, that's the scariest environment you ever want to be in. Like, there's no regard for any safety rules there. You have just bandsaws whizzing away. Safety glasses are optional.
Yeah, that's true.
It was not a
the
fun
shop
environment.
class that I took in middle school did not have safety. We did not wear safety class. I made a clock. To say I made a clock, though, is not fair, though. We had a kit.
Yeah.
You were given a slab of wood.
Right.
You already had like the created plastic dial thing with the 12, 9, 6, and 3 indices on it. And he had the plastic movement that took a single AA battery in the back, and you just had to sandwich them together
Right.
and cut the wood to however you want it. And we learned how to stain the wood, and it was cool. My mom sadly still has that clock and hasn't like burnt it. It still exists. Maybe I should feel good about that, but like it was the only class that I got to take. There was absolutely, like you said,
Right.
no safety in high school. We didn't have any. I got sent to a military school, so we didn't have any classes like that.
Yeah.
Did learn how to shoot though.
Nice.
That was
handy.
cool.
That's good.
I was on a rifle team.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll
that's
get
how I
into
got
that
my
later.
varsity jacket, shooting bullets.
The class that I enjoyed actually the most in college was our testing class.
We had safe eyewear for that and ear protection.
And instrumentation class. So we learned about how to instrument like stuff for the wind tunnel. So we did wind tunnel testing. So, putting pressure probes and wiring that through a bridge and then getting data off that.
That was in high school?
That was in college.
In college.
Yeah.
Your college instrumentation class sounds a lot. That was engineering instrumentation.
Yes. Yeah.
I took physics instrumentation. That was not fun.
Right.
That was basically like, you see your computer processor? There's a trillion transistors in it, a billion transistors in it. We're going to show you how to make one transistor. It took me all semester to find out, dude, you can't make a transistor.
Steve, I've got an article on, speaking of digital transformations, say goodbye to clutter, paper clutter.
Ooh,
This is from our
more e-waste.
frenemies in Canada, the Canadian Metalworking.
Yeah, we're not happy with them
publication.
right now.
They need to up their game.
They need to ban lighters and matches.
So it talks about going paperless across the entire ecosystem of a business. So not only are we focused on the manufacturing side, so processing parts, going to a paperless environment there, but if you go a little further upstream, like the design side, design or engineering or manufacturing engineering, whatever you like. I come from an old school engineering background of the early 2000s. To get something approved, we actually printed out the drawing, would redline the physical printouts, make those changes, to go through a couple of iterations like that, and then actually sign the drawing. And then that would get scanned and then stored somewhere for distribution. So that was an interesting experience. So transitioning from that to digital signatures, then we still do have 3D and 2D representations of the engineered model. And I think that is actually still beneficial. And some companies have taken the strategy of you still have to put notes, you still have process information. There's still like words you need to put. Putting that in the 3D space doesn't quite make sense. So a lot of companies have taken a 3D model and kept that as one entity, and then the say 2D represent information as a separate file. So there's two different files that exist, and they're linked to each other. And I really like that model, and shifting to paperless across the board. I don't know if that really makes sense, and we can get into our workflow here. But
okay.
The article does go over the benefits of going paperless where it makes sense.
Right.
So obviously efficiency and productivity. So this one talks about data. So we've seen issues on doing process improvement, specifically time. Like I want to make something faster. The first thing I do is, how long do you currently do it? We used to have a sheet of paper with a stopwatch and write down times, write down stamps. I have to write it down, then I've got to put in an Excel file, then I've got to transport it. So from acquiring, storing, and using data, obviously it makes a lot of sense going paperless. Operational flexibility, so being able to do something or make changes faster. And inventory management. We've been talking about just-in-time manufacturing for a long time, and that requires accurate inventory management. And the last two, record keeping and compliance, saving a file and having redundancies of those files. It's a little bit easier, of course. And then the last one is, of course, communication, collaboration, sharing files, which is interesting when you look at what files are emailed back and forth versus what you probably should send a link to.
Yeah.
And that's another thing we can get into later is about the digital e-waste scene.
And I agree. I just feel like that's less of a problem now, not because it's going away, but because other problems are ramping up and becoming rampant. Is that what that means?
We just found a definition of the word here. Steve, we're running a little bit long. How do we want to? Do you want to get into Inconel now, or do we want to?
I can save Inconel until the article is published, but I really want to geek out about all of this research that I did on Inconel. But we can save it for next time.
Let's save it for next time.
We'll go long.
let's let the audience tell us what experience they've had with Inconel. Because I've got some too. I've got some machining. I've got some welding experience. Forming with Inconel's fun. We'll get into that next time.
In printing.
Oh.
Printing's easy. That's why it came back. But we can get into that later.
We'll get into that later.
You can find out more about this episode and other episodes of the Tech Trends podcast at amtonline.org/resources. Like, share, subscribe.
Bing bong.
Bye, tech friends.
Good job.